Hello, people of the internet. So I wanted to make a video about Star Wars because, I make videos about theology and I make videos about movies, and I think, Star Wars would be a great way to combine the two. And that's what I like doing. I like combining things I like. So, the religions of Star Wars, or more accurately, the two religions that matter. Because there's a few, but there's only two that I really need to care about right now for this discussion. So, Jediism and Sithism, I don't have like a word to say either of these that are, that sound natural, because there isn't a word for these specific beliefs, but, because they're not real. But, yeah, they parallel real-world religions. Now, I would say that, Siths parallel Satanists. Here, this is probably not a good angle. Siths parallel Satanists. So, and then you have Jedi who parallel, you might think, oh, well, that would mean Jedi parallel Christians or some Abrahamic religion. But no, I would actually say they more so parallel Buddhists. Now, the reason I would say this is Satanism is about giving into your desires, your earthly desires, living your life happily because you only get one. And Sith are about giving into your emotions, not for specifically the reasons I gave for Satanism, but, just to gain power in the dark side or whatever. And that's why being powerful as a Sith is easier than being powerful as a Jedi. Is that as a Sith, you're giving into something that's already naturally present. Of course, you have to kind of make it worse. Like, there are good Sith, or good enough Sith who aren't emotionally bad people, but because they embrace these emotions, a lot of the time they become bad people as a result. For example, Darth Vader's desire was to save his wife. And the reason that made him fall to the dark side was because the Jedi wouldn't let him have that relationship. So he had to hide it. And then eventually it got to the point where it scared him and he became a Sith. So, it's both. So there are good reasons people become a Sith, but they can also be bad people because the teachings of the Sith don't necessarily make you a good following the teachings of the Sith don't necessarily make you a good person, but they can if they're followed morally, Similar to Satanism. Satanism has teachings like that as well, where if you follow them in a good way, you can be a good person, and if you follow them in a bad way, you can be a bad person. For example, we believe in one of the things that I think we believe. Keep in mind that when I say we believe a certain thing, this is just me generally gauging what I know about Satanism. I haven't read the satanic scriptures yet. I will, but I haven't done that yet. So this is just me vaguely saying what I am pretty sure. So, like, one of the things we believe in is, like, with manipulation, where it can be okay if you're manipulating people right, if you're making them better people. That's what's called lesser magic in Satanism, and then there's greater magic, which is the feelings you get from the rituals. I don't do any rituals or anything, because one, I don't know them, and two, I'm just not that type of person. One thing about religion is I've never really had any emotional connection to it. I don't know why. I think it's because of my autism, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I've never really given a shit about religion. I've never had any emotional connection to it, which is one of the differences between me and a lot of other atheist YouTubers, is a lot of the times they have these connections to their religion, like Apologia, for example. He would become a Christian if Christianity were revealed as true to him. Like, if you were to prove to him that Christianity were true, he would convert. But I wouldn't, sort of. It depends on what you mean by Christian. If by Christian you mean believing in the Christian, like, ideas, that the Christian God exists, that Jesus is the Messiah, died and was resurrected for the reasons he died and was resurrected, then yeah. I guess, yeah, but if you mean following that God, then no, I wouldn't. Because I think the God of the Bible is morally wrong. So, like, I wouldn't convert even if I were given information that would prove Catholicism, the denomination of Christianity I came from, were true. If that were proven to me, I wouldn't change my opinion on, like, what I think about the God of the Bible. It would just change my opinion on his existence. It would go from he doesn't exist, and if he did, he would suck, to he does exist, he sucks. That's all that would change. All right. Well, that's enough about me. Time to get back to what I was saying. So the Sith, they give into their emotions, which is similar to giving into your desires. And as I said, you can follow these things in a bad way or in a good way. If you give into your anger in times when you shouldn't, then that's bad. You can hurt people who don't deserve the hurt. And that's one of the issues with Satanism, is that some of our teachings can be reinterpreted by bad people to be used against other people. But the thing is Satanism gives people, LaVeyan Satanism. Keep in mind that whenever I say Satanism does a thing, I'm referring to the denomination I'm a part of, the one formed in the 60s by Anton LaVey. Satanism is, it can be interpreted in, like, a lot of weird ways, and it kind of gives you the benefit of the doubt. And because it gives you the benefit of the doubt, there's a lot of idiots who don't understand what we actually teach because the way we teach it is not that great. We assume you're smart enough to get what we mean. Like, the Satanic Bible has a very violent, like, language to it. Because we expect you to know, oh, Anton LaVey was also a performer. So he would use this language not because he actually wants to murder Christians, or not because he actually thinks that, we should just be, like, beasts and animals or whatever, but because he's just trying to sound cool, and he's trying to communicate his ideas of naturalism that we're the same as animals, and so fucking what? Just, we have natural desires, and if animals can give in to theirs, why can't we give in to ours? It's kind of like, it can be easily misinterpreted if you're an idiot. And that's another thing, too, with what I was saying with lesser and greater magic, is that people don't look at what those terms mean, and then they assume that they're literally magic, and they're not. I've already explained that, so I don't really need to. But yeah, so, and in the same way, giving into your emotions can be a problem as well. If you give into your fear, you can keep yourself alive. But if you have, say, an unjustified fear, like, say, discrimination, for example, with discrimination, you can be afraid of something that is simply different from you, that isn't a threat. Now, if you, so if you give in to that fear, then that would be a bad thing. But if you, say, have a fear of, like, I don't know, some sort of like a thing that can kill you, like, for example, if someone saw Darth Vader and ran, that would be giving into a good fear. If someone saw someone with a breathing apparatus and assumed they were evil like Darth Vader and then killed them for it, that would be a bad fear that you would be giving into. A similar thing with anger. You only give into it if it's someone who deserves the anger. Like, Anakin killing the Tuscans was only not justified because he killed all of them. If he killed specifically the ones torturing his mom, maybe just the men and the women, because they, the adults, because they would be the ones likely to be involved. The kids definitely aren't. So, if he just stuck to the adults, I wouldn't you know, I wouldn't call it morally wrong. Keep in mind also, I do know that they're kind of animalistic. They're not just people, but they're still people, you know? They're a different species, so they have kind of a different level of being people and animal. That definition of people and animal, the difference kind of gets blurry when you're talking about aliens. They actually are. One thing is they started out as a more intelligent species, for lack of a better word. And once Tatooine was glassed, which means like once it was blasted with like a giant like laser beam that turned the planet entirely into glass, those creatures evolved to live in the more deserty climate that came from it. Of course, eventually that glass turned to sand, and then it became a desert planet. That's actually why different planets are different environments, is because of individual events that make them that way. Usually, they're not entirely one environment, and Star Wars knows that. Anyway, the Jedi I compare to Buddhism, not Christianity. Although you can bring up Christian comparisons, I think it's better to bring up Buddhism as the comparison, because I think Buddhism works better as both as like a similar comparison to the Jedi and as an anti-Satanism comparison more so than Christianity, even though Satanism was created in response to Christianity. Buddhism and Jediism. So the Jedi believe in not giving into your emotions, holding them back, because giving into them is not the will of the Force or whatever. And so, yeah, so that leads to issues where you have Jedi who don't do that, like Mundi, is like a psychopath because he follows that law to too strong of a degree, you know? Like, for example, so, like, not feeling emotion can lead to people like sociopaths who'll just kill because, you know, someone's a problem, but they'll be emotionless about it, so they'll still be following the Jedi law. And then you have, like, Buddhism can be done in the same way, so, like, ignoring desire is exactly the point of Buddhism. So, to ignore desire can be a problem because let's say you desire to help someone, or you desire something that actually would help you. Like, for example, like if you desire to, I don't know, like I'll give an example that I do because, you know, I don't know, you desire to smoke weed or something. Then, you know, do it. It makes you happy. Why do you need to not be happy because your religion says so? Like, that's a problem. Now, if it makes you happy to avoid those things, if following these rules makes you happy, then yeah, continue doing it. But if they're actively making you less happy, then don't. Um, Now, um, the Jedi and so the Jedi are kind of, they kind of are bad people. You know, the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, I mean, kind of shows that. And it is kind of funny that I think the best comparison is Buddhism because George Lucas is Buddhist. I think he's an Orthodox Buddhist. I don't know what the differences are between the different denominations, but it doesn't really matter for this discussion. So, the Jedi are flawed because they hate emotions. The Jedi and the Sith, the issue with them is they have this black and white view of either light side or dark side. No one decides, I'm going to follow both sides. When I say no one, I mean no one in the films. I know that they're a great Jedi. And I know that that's also not technically true, actually, because I just realized Qui-Gon and Mace Windu both use the dark side, just very rarely. More so Mace than Qui-Gon, though. Yeah, so they don't want to use the dark side at all, because if they use the dark side, Because that's kind of like giving into the opposite side. That's giving into your emotions. That's what you're not supposed to do. That's the whole point of the religion. In the same way that if a Buddhist, as I said before with the example of smoking weed, gave into their desires, it would feel good, but it would be against their law. So they would be like, what the hell? Like, this, is bad, even though there really is no reason to think of it as bad. Um, Yeah, because of this black and white view, they don't see things as complex. They don't realize that there are times for emotion and times for calmness, you know. So because of that, the Jedi prevented Anakin from having love, which led to him falling to the dark side. And then Luke's love, and then they tried to do the same with Luke, and then Luke loved his father, and that saved the Jedi. So it shows that the black and white idea of good versus evil, of love versus hatred, is not like, or of Jedi versus Sith isn't actually as good. It's more about like love versus hatred, and the Jedi don't see it that way. They don't realize that they need to. And the Sith, they give into their emotions too much. They kill people who don't really deserve it. They do all kinds of bad things. My main point is just it's kind of ironic that as I said, that Jediism is easy to compare to Buddhism. And it feels like the story was written as a criticism of religion, which is weird when you think of the fact that George is a Buddhist. Now, I have heard people say that Buddhism isn't a religion. I've heard Buddhists say that. I've heard a fictional Buddhist from a movie. I think the movie was called like Captain Fantastic or Mr. Fantastic. It's about this, if I'm misremembering the name, I'll give you a quick rundown. It's about this dude who has like this family that live in the woods, and then his wife dies. His wife kills herself, and they go to her funeral, and he complains about how they're giving her a Christian funeral even though she's a Buddhist. So yeah, it's a pretty good movie. It actually kind of, because I have depression, it kind of was the parts that I've seen of it, were actually pretty good because I liked seeing them react to her after her suicide, because it kind of made me think like, well, this is why I definitely shouldn't act on these thoughts, because this is how my family will react. I can feel as alone as I want, but that doesn't mean I am. But yeah. So he might not think of it as a religion and may have done what I was saying before deliberately. He might also do the opposite, as religious people tend to see things as black and white, at least in my experiences, so it's possible that he sees it as black and white and doesn't realize that he's made the Jedi these flawed people, and that he's given these good things to the Sith. Yeah, so well, that's, I guess, all for the main discussion. I do have some stuff to tell you real quick, to tell you specifically, person in the audience. So, what should I start with? Well, what's a good thing to start with? I just should say something. Anyway, so I wanted to create a channel name, other than my name, because I was thinking I'm kind of being a bit of making atheist YouTuber type videos, and I was thinking, and I came up with a little pun in my head, and I was thinking that would be a good name. So what it was I wanted to make the channel name be theologically, in that it's like theologically, but it's spelled, but it has like a dash in the middle, because it's like the idea is I'm looking at God logically, because what I do here is I look at movies through a theological lens, and I look at theology through a writer lens. So I see the Bible as just a book. I see the Quran as just a book. I see the Book of Mormon as just a book. None of these scriptures mean anything other than the historical meaning, other than what the Bible can tell me about the ancient Hebrews and what it can tell me about the Romans around in the middle of the 1st century, and what a Book of Mormon can tell me about the theology and politics of the 1800s, and what the Quran can tell me about whatever a crazy Arab guy was screaming about, I guess. The Quran is not actually that interesting. It's okay. Like, I would recommend specific chapters, just not the entire book. If any of you would like me to recommend specific chapters, then go ahead and just, I don't know, say something in the comments and I'll respond with my recommendations. The one about Mary is great. I like that one. That's the one where Jesus talks as a baby. So yeah, I wanted to change my channel name to that. And I also wanted to apologize for a thing that I was doing and also explain why. So, the Book of Mormon Quran video that I was making, I'm sure a lot of you guys know about what this is. I think it's called burnout, when you do a thing for a long period of time and then you get bored of it and you stop. That's kind of what happened. I'm on almost chapter 60 right now of the Book of Mormon. And I'm starting to run back, getting back into the energy to do it. So I'm going to continue doing the research for the video. And I wanted to apologize. I was saying I'm sorry for that delay. Because so far, I haven't made any of the videos I want to make about theology. Just the ones about movies. So, it kind of sucks. So, the theology... So, that'll be... So, I'll be probably making mostly movie-related content, looking at things through a theological lens. And then I'll be making theology videos every once in a while, because they require a pretty good amount of research. So, that'll be my first in detail, like, in-depth thing. And then my next one will be after that. Well, of course it would be. That is how the word next works. My next one will be about a analysis of the Pauline epistles. A literary analysis of the Pauline epistles, and to see if I can kind of spot the difference between between the disputed and non-disputed and sort of disputed ones. So like if I can see the difference between 1st Thessalonians, Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Philemon. I want to name all the genuine ones off the top of my head at least. Philemon, I'm forgetting them, so I won't name them because it's kind of a waste of time. Anyway, yeah, I'll do a literary analysis of that. And I was thinking whether I want to read Acts and Luke before I read Acts as I read the epistles. And if you want me to read Acts and the epistles chronologically, then go ahead and tell me in the comments. If you don't, then go ahead and tell me in the comments. And if you don't give a shit at all, then go ahead and tell me in the comments. The reason I've been debating it in my head is because the Acts epistles thing, it's kind of annoying because, like, there are contradictions between the epistles and the book of Acts. In the book of Acts, for example, the one I can think of, the one that I've heard of without having read either of these, is in Galatians, Paul deliberately doesn't go to the apostles because he wants to explain to everyone that his gospel isn't the one that the apostles are preaching, but the one that that came from God to show that it's divinely inspired and not just from them, and he's claiming it's divinely inspired. However, in Acts, he immediately goes to Jerusalem and talks to them. You know, and I just wanted to, that's why I was debating about it in my head, was I wasn't sure whether I wanted to see contradictions like that and get annoyed about them, or whether, because I'm unsure how reliable Acts is. Because I'm pretty sure Luke isn't that reliable, and Acts was written by the same guy who wrote Luke. But the thing is they're still separate books about separate periods of time. So I don't want to judge them based off, like, I don't want to judge them like that. You know? And, yeah, if you're wondering which Gospels I think are closer to reliable, it's probably Matthew and Mark, because Mark is the first, and then Matthew also humanizes Jesus like Mark does, and has some extra stuff like from the Q source. Oh, shit. So yeah, so like when it's funny because there's this one YouTuber who said that only Mark matters. I think his name is Telltale, who said that only Mark matters because it's the first. And like that genuinely confused me. I was like, you do know what Earth is, right? Have you ever been there? Because I'm thinking like, you do know that Matthew and Luke and John are still, they still matter, right? They're still important. Because first of all, Matthew, Luke, and John still tell us about the periods they were written in, and when you're talking about historically, Matthew and Luke drew from the Q source, and Luke drew from Paul. So they have reasons to believe we have reasons to believe that some of what they're saying is accurate, because Luke got stuff from Paul and got stuff from... Keep in mind, when I say Paul, I mean the Pauline epistles, not Paul the person. I don't think Luke is the author. As I've said before, when I say Luke, Matthew, Mark, or John as the names of the authors, that's not me saying this is what I believe. That's me saying this is the name that I have, so I'm going to use it. In the same way that if I was talking about the Catholic epistles and I said John, Jude, or Peter, or James, that doesn't mean I believe they were written by those people. And if I were talking about the inauthentic Pauline epistles and I said Paul, it's the same deal there. Not that I believe that it was written by those people, but that's the name I have, so that's the name I'll use. Anyway, so Luke drew from the Pauline epistles and drew from Q, and Matthew drew from Q as well. Not from the Pauline epistles, though, because Matthew was a Jewish Christian. Likely to be. Because he did so much Moses-ing. You know, he was comparing him to Moses so much. Yeah. I'm glad I put this all at the end, because this is all of it just a bunch of bullshit probably most people don't really care about. But anyway, yeah, so the Book of Mormon video will be coming out at some point, and when it does, I'll start working on other theology content. So, yeah, see ya.